Hi, it's Wednesday, July 23rd, and we have several systems active in the tropics today, primarily focused in the Western Pacific side of things. So we have four systems to keep an eye on as we go throughout this week. Now, three of them are within the same sort of gyre. You can see the remnants of Wifa here over northern Vietnam, and we talked about how we would potentially be seeing development behind it in the Philippine Sea. And you can see there's a lot of convection, and this is actually associated with a large gyre, large area of low pressure, a big monsoonal low, northeast of the Philippines and east of Taiwan. And within this, we have several areas of low pressure embedded within it that are being designated by the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. We have 10W, which is a tropical depression. This system is the most prominent of the batch, I'd say, and this one would be the most likely to intensify as it tracks northwest. And we'll talk about this one primarily, but we do have two others, Invest 99W north of the Philippines and Invest 90W here on the south side of all this gyre. And really, all of this is just going to slowly lift northwest and bring a ton of rainfall to the Philippines and Taiwan and eastern China and southern Japan over the coming days. You can see this happen if we look at the European. This is showing you the low level spin, and you can see the very broad area of low pressure that we have here. And the two primary vortexes within this are TD10 and Invest 99W on the north side of the Philippines. And so for track of this, the whole gyre is slowly lifting northwest, but these smaller areas of low pressure are simply just going to rotate around this broader low. So TD10 is going to be rotating northwest towards southern Japan and Taiwan, and 99W is going to be lifting, or not lifting, but moving south into the Philippines and may just stay here for quite a while. You can see this happen as we go in time. This is out to Wednesday and Thursday. Now this whole gyre is lifting northwest. The center of the gyre is up towards Taiwan. 99W is here now in the South China Sea, just west of the Philippines. And here's 10W, now over the southern Japanese islands. And these are going to continue revolving around this broader area of low pressure. Now, this does have some good news. The fact that these areas of low pressure interacting with each other too, being embedded within the same gyre, means that intensification for the most part should not be all too significant. I do think if we are likely to see intensification out of one of them, it's probably going to be out of TD10 because the environment's probably going to be more favorable for this one. You can see that as a very common pattern for this Pacific typhoon season so far. We have this upper level low northwest of it, which is beginning to cut off and back west into eastern China, and that's going to begin to initially shear it out of the west, but you can see as it continues backing west, we get more southerly flow on the eastern side of this, which helps have a more divergent flow channel north of TD10, and this may allow the system to intensify a little bit before it comes in. And it may shear 99W here in the South China Sea. You can see it's on the southern end of it, so we may get some westerly flow, though admittedly this also has a pretty divergent flow off west with that monsoonal flow aloft, and it's possible if it separates enough like on the European here from TD10 further northeast, it's possible we see some intensification here, though I think it will be more limited because it is going to be spending a lot of its life near the Philippines. But the key message really out of all of this mess as we go throughout the next several days is heavy rainfall will continue across the Philippines, eastern China, Taiwan, and southern Japan. This is a European ensemble average rainfall over the next 7 days, and the European ensemble has 51 members. So this is an average of 51 different European runs, average out into the rainfall totals into this map, and you can see across, especially the Philippines and Taiwan, very significant rainfall. In addition to what we've already gotten over the past week from WIFA and this broad gyre so far, we could be seeing at least 150 millimeters of rainfall. But especially in the high terrain of Taiwan and the northern Philippines, we could be seeing totals exceed 200, 300 millimeters of rainfall. I know it doesn't show that here in Taiwan on this map, but I do think it's being a little bit underdone, especially if 10W does come further south on its track, as it may do revolving around the broader area of low pressure. So very heavy rainfall will continue across this part of the world as we go throughout this next week. But hopefully, like I mentioned, with that proximity of these two systems being within the same gyre, will keep intensification limited. Now, there is a separate system from this entire mess in the Philippine Sea, designated Invest 98W. It's this clump of storms southeast of the Mariana Islands. Over the next few days, development is not anticipated to be very significant out of this because it is being sheared. You can see that as this low tries to form here over the coming days, all the thunderstorms being produced by the large gyre northwest of it is shearing it pretty strongly out of the north and northwest. Now, eventually, as this gyre begins to die out, the environment may get more favorable for this as it continues lifting north, and we have some models trying to suggest that we could have an intensifying storm east of Japan by this point. Where it goes beyond this point is a little bit unknown, and really it's not worth speculating over right now. If this does become more of a risk of potentially it goes further west, maybe it gets closer to any land masses, we'll have to see. But that's 5 days plus out by this point. So there's a lot of things that can change with this system, and we don't even have a formed area of low pressure with this one yet, and may not for several days. Now, all of this activity is being fostered by a bunch of rising air across the Western Pacific right now, as I talked about several days ago, but this is now going to begin to translate east as we go throughout the next week. And we may see as we head into the latter half of this month into early August, this begin to favor development in the Eastern and Central Pacific and the Atlantic. And you can see this if we look at the MJO forecast from the European model. You can see where we are now. We are in the Western Pacific, which is why we're seeing all this activity take place right now. But it is translating east. The further counterclockwise you go on this map, the further east you are in longitude across the world. So as you go further west here into regions 8 and 1, this is favoring the Eastern Pacific and the Atlantic. And this is better visualized in this map from Tropical Tidbits. You can see all this green, which is favorable for thunderstorms, is no longer just kept here in the Western Pacific. It's now favoring the Central Pacific. And if I had an animated loop of this, you would see it continue to go east and favor the Eastern Pacific and the Atlantic as we head into early August. And so this may support some tropical development. Now, something to note is that it is weakening on a lot of these models as it comes west, and that has to do with the cold water that we have with the cold bias neutral and the ENSO regions across this part of the Pacific. That naturally does decrease the magnitude of these MJO pulses, but it should still be enough to fire up some activity as we head into the more peak season months of the Eastern Pacific and Atlantic hurricane seasons. And we do have a couple of areas of interest active right now in both of these basins. This one in the Central Pacific is tied to this rising air motion pushing east across the Central Pacific. You can see low chance on this right now. And the good news is for this, even if this does form, in all likelihood, it will stay south of the Hawaiian Islands, so no concern there for development that would impact the Hawaiian Islands from this. And we do have this week another area of interest in the northern Gulf. You can see 10% development here. This is not tied to the rising air. This is a bit of old frontal boundary energy and perhaps a little bit of 93L from last week that's now coming back into the Gulf under a ridge of high pressure over the central and eastern United States. And it's possible we see some development here, but you can see 10% chance right now from the Hurricane Center on this. And we really are not going to talk about this one all too much right now. Now, beyond this, we have some areas of interest marked in the week 2 to week 3 time frame from the Climate Prediction Center. This is more tied to that rising air, like I talked about, progressing east. You can see after the Central Pacific area of interest, we have 2 areas in week 2 and week 3 showing significant odds of development greater than 40% in the Eastern Pacific off of Mexico. For now, fairly quiet in the Atlantic, though we have seen some long-range models try and show something trying to fire up in the tropical Atlantic in that time frame. But that is getting pretty far out. You can see in this time frame, this is getting to mid-August. So we'll have to see how this does go. But of course, I'll have videos on this as we do progress through the latter half of the month into early August. And if any storms do form, I'll make sure to have information on that. That's all that I've got for today. A lot to talk about, I know, very active tropics, but that's what you expect. We're heading into the more active months of the Northern Hemisphere cyclone season. But stay safe in Eastern Asia as this whole gyre, this whole mess moves northwest. Hopefully the rainfall does not cause all too much flooding issues, but I can't imagine we'll get away from that, in especially the Philippines and Taiwan, with all the rainfall we've gotten over the past week. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.